There we go.
It worked.
We've done it 30 times now.
I don't know what happened. I was sending requests and then it said it was expired. And then, anyways, whatever. I'm here
I
now.
have
I don't know what's going on.
yeah, good seeing you. Well, happy Remembrance Day. How was your day today? What did you do for Remembrance
It
Day?
was incredible. I started my day as I always do down in Spencer Smith Park. We have a Naval Veterans Memorial. So that service was at 9 a.m. and it was a small gathering. Obviously, they did not publicize it, but there were a fair number of folks that came down. All of City Council joined, which was nice. And folks that were out and about anyway, walking, stopped, and everyone kept their distance, which was awesome. Everyone stayed 6 feet apart. Most people wore masks, even though it was outside. So it's a double layer of protection. And we had representatives from the federal government, province, regional government, and then myself on behalf of the city. So it was a great ceremony as always. Yeah. So
And,
that was right. And then of course, the big event was the main November 11th ceremony at the Cenotaph, which is right outside City Hall. That one was live streamed, and so we had encouraged people not to come down. A few folks who live or work in the area did come by, but again, everyone was very, very respectful, kept distance, wore masks, and it was a small group of people that were participating in the actual ceremony right at the Cenotaph. And we had over 2,000 computers, I'll say, join us, because there could have been more people tuning in from home, several watching the same live stream. So that's about as many as we'd get in person
yeah,
every year. So our numbers went up with this virtual ceremony, or at least they held steady. So I really want to thank all the residents of Burlington for tuning in to the live stream and being respectful of the Legion's request and our request that people not come down and to enjoy the live stream. So
yeah.
as always, very moving.
Yeah, I was reading somewhere that more people saw this Remembrance Day than any other, just because it went virtual. So
Mm,
it was just a lot easier for people to watch. So, yeah,
absolutely. They could step out for half an hour, even if they were working or at school. And so I think going forward, post COVID, I think we should always have a live stream component of an event and also have the in person when we're able to gather again.
agreed. So lots going on. I haven't talked to you in a week, but it feels like a year with all the news that's happening. Um,
That's
so the
the way it
first,
is in a pandemic. We live
it,
48 hours in one morning.
you're right, because
So,
just over the last week, it's been just a lot more developments in regards to obviously the way the province handles COVID-19, the response and everything.
very
So
much.
now the province has given kind of the chief medical officers of municipalities the power to put restrictions on the region. Um, so I guess the question is, at what point does the chief medical officer of Halton put restrictions on Halton? Is there a certain threshold that has to happen?
So there's no new powers. Actually, the medical officers of health for the public unit, and in our case, our public unit is all of Halton Region, so the 4 municipalities. They've always had the authority under Section 22 to issue directives, orders that have the force of law, and or they can issue guidelines. And so back in October, actually, middle of October, our own medical officer of health did issue guidelines that suggested that people should limit their social circles and interaction to people only within their own household, and only go out for essential trips. And that's the one that also included the guidance around sports, fitness classes, canceled games classes. That took up all of the airtime, but those other recommendations were there, dating as far back as October. And of course, the recommendations we see coming from Dr. Lawrence Lowe in Peel and Dr. Eileen Davila in Toronto are exactly that. So our medical officer of health recommended that back in October. It doesn't have the force of law. Though we are looking at, I've reached out to our team at the region to see what might be an option to put things into force of law that could be tucked under the Emergency Protection Act. I think some of the regulations or directives rather that Dr. Lowe put into place do have force of law. So we're still examining that. But that guidance has been there with us since October. I've personally followed that, as I always do, follow our medical officer of health recommendations. So I don't go out and socialize for coffee, even with one other person if they're not in my household. I respect those guidelines, and we are trying to limit our trips to essential. I'm here at City Hall, but I'm only here about once a week, and usually when I'm chairing City Council. I was here today, obviously, for the Remembrance Day ceremony. So very much trying to abide by that, and really recommending and encouraging that Burlington residents also do that. And that's really to prevent us from sliding into that lockdown closure situation. This is what open with restrictions look like. A restaurant can be open, but please, only go with your immediate household. We have to stop the social gatherings, and the evidence, best as we can tell, is that is where the major source of spread is happening. People are relaxing, they're getting together with folks, they figure if there's no more than 10, that's okay, and then tomorrow it's a different 10, and tomorrow it's a different 10. Well, that is exactly how the virus spreads. So we really need people to go back to that concept of household bubble. Voluntarily limit your trips to essential, and as I said, that recommendation has been there from our own medical officer of health since the middle of October. I will be doing my very best over the next couple of days to work with my fellow Halton mayors and regional chair to amplify that message, because as I said, I think it got lost amid all of the conversation about fitness and gameplay, which was in the same set of directives that our medical officer of health issued, but everyone focused on that and didn't focus so much on the other. So Burlington's doing really well, though, by the way. The numbers that are going up Halton wide, they're not going up evenly in every municipality. It's really Milton and Oakville that are seeing the spike. Burlington is still doing really well. However, we cannot be complacent, and we have to make sure we continue to follow that guidance. So that is my plea to the people of Burlington.
So let me ask you this then. Is there a certain threshold, kind of like, hey, if we hit like 100 number, we're going to have to roll back? Or is it like...
So that framework, and you recall we talked about this before when the Halton mayors and regional chair wrote to the Premier and wrote to Dr. Williams, we were looking for what is the comprehensive set of indicators that would suggest additional measures are warranted, and what would those be? And then we got the new framework from the province, and there is a longer set. Really in the past it was, we looked at the people saw the numbers going up and in isolation felt that warranted a lockdown. We said we don't think it does, because all the other indicators, the R factor, the positivity rate, the hospital capacity, those were not at a problematic threshold. And so the province obviously and the medical table agreed with what we were saying. And so we've always said, look, focus in on the data, and it's important to look at which data. And so now that we have the framework, it lays out exactly what the infection rate per 100,000 is, what your R factor should be, what your positivity rate should be, what your hospital capacity should be, to warrant either staying in the protect versus going into restrict or lockdown. So Halton's right on the edge again, right? And again, that's largely because of two of our municipalities, but we're all in the same public health unit. We're all in this together. So we may, if we don't take those voluntary measures around limiting our interaction to household and only going out for essential trips in the short term, we may end up finding ourselves moved into a higher category, because now the indicators are there. They weren't there a couple of weeks ago.
So let me ask you this, and you touched on Oakville and Milton having a higher COVID percentage, or like a higher case count, I guess, right? Why do you think that is? Do you think that's just strictly because of geography, or is there other reasons?
It's a good question, and I would say that's one for our health officials to look at. So I have asked that question, and near as we can tell, the source of spread and the source of significant spread outside of long-term care and outside of any specific outbreak in a place of work, for example, it's really that social interaction. And so, maybe there are bigger partiers in Oakville and Milton. I don't know. Maybe they have bigger family gatherings and they expand their social bubble. But near as we can tell, and what our medical officers of health and looking at what Dr. Davila has done in Toronto, what Dr. Lowe has done in Peel, that is exactly what they're focusing on, is limiting non-essential trips and limiting your interaction to people that are directly within your own household. So those measures have been recommended in Halton since October. We have supported those, and so we're going to continue to spread that message far and wide, that is really the key to getting our numbers back in line.
So just to clarify, in Halton, restaurants, dine-in is normal, but they have to be 6 feet apart, correct?
Right now, the rules in restaurants are only 6 people at a table.
Okay.
Now, the challenge with that, and this is what our own medical officer of health recommended several weeks ago, what is happening in Peel and Toronto, is that those 6 people now should only be people that are within your household. So
that's in Halton as well?
That is the recommendation that has been there since the middle of October, yes. That if you're going out, only go out with people in your own household. And so, what we saw, for example, with the hockey league, it may or may not have been the gameplay that caused the infection. It was a bunch of people who are not related to each other going out to a restaurant and sitting close, masks off, eating, drinking. So that's the issue. It's not so much whether restaurants should be open or closed. It's that who goes and who sits close to each other is critically important. And so the guideline in Halton from our own medical officer of health, this dates back to October 19th, was when she issued her recommendations that you only go out with people in your own household. That is the safest way to enjoy a dine-in restaurant if that is in fact what you're going to do. So I know that's tough for folks. We just kind of got used to being able to socialize a little bit. And if we don't want to see those restaurants have to close down completely for everybody, we need to follow that directive. So only people with your household.
In restaurants.
In restaurants. Well, you see, that's the thing. Everyone was talking about fitness classes, which you can go to.
Yeah.
And gameplay, which we've reinstated when the province created the new framework. Those elements of our medical officer of health guidelines were reversed, but the others still stand. And really that is essential that we get back to. For now, especially if you want to see extended family over Christmas, for now, we have to really limit our interactions to people with our own household.
Interesting. I was just at Square One Shopping Center in Mississauga, and I was about to go to the patio. They wouldn't let me in because I was with somebody that he didn't live in the same household as me. So
they took your ID right at the door then?
They asked, and I was honest, right? So, I mean...
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, so
and that is really what should be happening in Burlington as well. But as you didn't know, I think a lot of people are not aware, and so we have a job ahead of us as mayor's chair and as our communications folk across the region to continue to spread and amplify that message.
So restaurants are obviously being hit super hard. Toronto, Peel. Hopefully not in Halton anytime soon, but I mean, there is a chance that it might happen. I know Burlington, I'll ask, what is Burlington doing to help, right? And do you think the province and the feds have done enough for restaurant help?
I think everybody is doing everything we can think of and everything we can, in the limits of time and space and money. But certainly I have heard from restaurants that the federal programs, the wage subsidy has been a lifesaver, and not just for restaurants, for some of our other service providers and organizations, that the new programs that were just announced by the province welcome. They're going to match contributions that municipalities make. So, Burlington kind of stepped out on a limb to offer our businesses grants for PPE and for changing their interior to make it more safe, whether that was plastic barriers or stickers on the floor or whatever it looked like. We were contributing to that, and then the digital Main Street transition, so businesses that were able could transition their business to an online platform. So hearing that some of those now will be matched by the province, I know is just welcome. Every little bit helps. We also are providing grant for fees for businesses, restaurants specifically, that are extending their patio season. So everything we can think of, we are working on. And I think the federal and provincial governments are also doing the same. The new rent relief program that was announced by the federal government to make it direct that tenants could apply, that was a really critical piece because not all landlords were participating or applying for that program. So that is welcome news, I know, to many of our businesses that were just unable to get that rent relief because their landlord, for whatever reason, didn't participate. So lots of good news. Recently, they have heard from all of us as advocates, but more importantly, they've heard from the businesses themselves about what they needed and what aspects of a program weren't working, and then tweaked it. So, I think everyone's doing the best they can. We all are.
What are you hearing from the businesses now? I mean, just because obviously Halton is on the cusp. Obviously beside today the epicenter of COVID-19, which is Peel right now, right? So I mean, what are the businesses talking to you about? You must be under a lot of pressure with, kind of keeping everything open.
Well, it's not open or closed, right? It never has been, and that's never what we advocated for. It is open with restrictions. So to go back to our restaurant, a restaurant could be open, but the safest way for any of us to enjoy that restaurant is to only go to it and sit down and eat with members of our own household. That's a restriction. Yeah. We will need our businesses to help us. They should be asking people at the door as they did in your case. So is there a way to make that more formalized? We're looking into any avenue that we can spread that message. So we can, in limited circumstances, enjoy a lot of activities. It doesn't have to be open or closed, but it absolutely has to come with restrictions. It's not the same old, the way we used to enjoy a restaurant or a gym or a fitness class or any of the services that we've come to enjoy. They all are different. And I think all of us are hoping as much as we can to keep those activities available to our community. It's much more than the economy. That is an important piece, and it shouldn't be, we shouldn't be pitting public health or the economy. We can do both. And public health also includes mental health. It also includes financial health for the people that work in those businesses, that we send them home without a job. What does that mean? What does that mean for them? So we need to move beyond that sort of oppositional conversation to, we need to look at how we protect our businesses and all of their employees and keep everybody safe. Both and. It's not either or. It shouldn't be either or. And we can do this, but it will require some more discipline and possibly some more legislation so that, folks know what the restrictions are. And again, stick to your own household for now. Only go out for essential trips. If people can limit themselves voluntarily to that, follow the guidelines of our medical officer of health, we can start to get this under control. And it's going to take all of us.
What are your thoughts on the new color-coded COVID-19 system?
Well, it's actually a good system because everyone understands that yellow is a warning, orange is getting closer to red, red is not good, and green is good. So, we want to all get to green, which is where folks are when there's not a serious COVID situation or outbreak, and people understand that if you are in the red zone, that's not where you want to be. So, but we also understand that if you're in yellow or orange, that's the warning sign. That means we have to start to pull back a little bit, go back to some of those more restrictive behaviors, stick into our household, only go out for essential trips, as a for example. So I think the color coding works better than stage 2, stage 3. That doesn't convey the same urgency, but also the whole framework, it wasn't just color coded, the whole framework had also all of the health indicators, what the thresholds would be, which is exactly what we had asked for, is show us what the criteria are to move people between zones or phases now, or colors. How, then we can ourselves check the criteria and see if we're starting to get close to that, and it's not a surprise for anyone. And we can also encourage and amplify those messages to say to people, we're getting close to tripping into another zone higher up the red chart, closer to red. We don't want to be close to red. So let's figure out what we can do from a preventive nature to get back to green. So that's our goal. Everybody wants to go to green.
Cool. You don't want to get close to Mississauga and Brampton right now. We're in red right now.
We don't want to be red. Nobody wants to be red.
What's your hospital capacity looking like in Burlington?
We still have lots of capacity here. And we still have our pandemic response unit of 91 beds that are not used. So that's one of the indicators that we're very good on. And if you just looked at Burlington, our numbers are 4 or 5 a day, sometimes around 10, which is what it's been throughout. So, but again, it's a whole health unit. We live in partnership with our 4 municipalities, so we have to look at it from a holistic nature. And overall, the numbers are not what they should be in Halton.
Testing centers in Burlington. Any news or updates on that?
So the hospital has increased their capacity to about 500 tests a day, which they actually don't max out on. So we have testing capacity right now. The city has also been very willing to quickly, if needed, provide city facilities. Nelson Arena was one that was earlier offered. We've been told that's not needed at this point, but we really do need to work with the province to see how we might increase asymptomatic testing. So that was something that was brought online, and then because of the significant increase in numbers, there just wasn't the capacity to provide that. But really, that's where we need to get to, that folks who, for example, if you are going into long-term care, you're asymptomatic, go get a test to make sure you're not bringing it in. We can think of situations where people might have reason to come into close contact. They're not symptomatic themselves. Getting those folks tested before they interact and then later discover that they have the virus, they just didn't know it yet. That's how it's going to spread, is through those asymptomatic carriers. So we really need to figure out a way to add asymptomatic testing into the system, and certainly Burlington is ready to provide space. The labs and the testing actually has to be there, of course, to do the work. So that's where we really need the province to and the federal government, who has a role to play in this as well.
So we're 26 minutes in already. You have 4 minutes to talk about whatever you want. Or we can be done. Or we can be done.
Yes. So I'm just thinking what we did this week. So fireworks in Burlington. Okay. Always a very controversial topic, but who knew? We did a survey, and normally we get, a good survey will get 1,000, maybe 2,000 folks. We had 46,000 people.
Wow. Okay.
Take a survey on fireworks. Now, we didn't control for people who might live outside Burlington, so we're not sure they're all Burlington residents, but we just got a report on fireworks at committee this week, and it's going to council on the 23rd, where we have said, look, we've heard both sides of this, but we've heard a lot of concerns from folks who some want to ban fireworks altogether, not environmentally friendly. Some have concerns about the impact of the noise, and especially when it's indiscriminate. You don't know your neighbor's having a party, and then all of a sudden everybody's woken up with these banging and your pets go crazy. There's a lot of folks that aren't fans of I'll call it the family or the private fireworks, and so we tried to strike a balance. And as I said, this is what went through committee. It didn't land on council for final approval yet, so you can still weigh in if you want to. But what we decided was that fireworks would only be allowed, so the family fireworks or the personal private backyard fireworks would only be allowed on Canada Day and Victoria Day. And if you wanted to do fireworks any other time during the year, for a cultural event or a religious event, neighborhood block party, then you have to come in and get a permit and get permission, and make sure that you have somebody who is certified in firework discharge. So you can still do it, but it's got to be more organized and really tied to a larger community event, so that we don't have this indiscriminate fireworks going off. So that was kind of the balance that we struck. I think we're the first municipality to kind of keep the door open while closing it a little. So folks have thoughts about that, we are all ears. The other thing that we did, which was really important, was we changed our property standards bylaw around when heating would have to be turned on in apartment buildings. Okay. And in currently, when we used to, I mean, it's what, 18, 19 degrees out, November 11th today, weather getting warmer. So the current bylaw is that the heat has to be turned on September 1st. That's a bylaw, you have to do it. And so some of these older buildings where the units are not in, you know, the temperature control is not in each unit, the system takes about 2 weeks to turn over from air conditioning to heating. So a September 1st requirement from the city to turn on your heat on September 1st, first of all, you probably don't need it in September. Maybe, you know, it's even questionable about middle of October, but nevertheless, the air conditioning was being turned off 2 weeks prior to that date to get everything turned over. That's what it took. So that meant that in the middle of August, people's AC was shut off while they turned the system over to get ready to turn the heat on September 1st, according to our bylaw. So we moved that date by 2 weeks. We probably could have moved it more, but we've moved it at least 2 weeks. So the heat doesn't need to come on now until September 15th. And then it needs to stay on until May 31st. So we may yet have more tweaks to that. I can tell you through my 10 years here, I have received many complaints about the air conditioning not coming on soon enough in May, and the heat coming on too soon in September, just because of the mild, increasingly mild weather that we're getting. So we did provide that one change to help folks provide some relief in apartment buildings.
So expect the last two subjects to be articles on Quick Bite News tomorrow. All right.
Awesome.
Yeah,
good.
so.
Well, there's lots more we did at committee, but I'm drawing a blank here. So those are the two big ones that I know people will be pleased to see.
I have it in my questions now. It's ask Marianne Meed Ward anything she wants to talk about on my note. Every week in caps. So,
that's dangerous.
Yeah. So now that I know that I have to eat with somebody from my household in Halton.
That's right. Yes.
My wife is the COVID police, so I'll be eating alone. So.
Ah.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
You can take her out.
No, she doesn't want to go out.
Oh, well right? Then.
Yeah, so I'll be
smart.
Table for one.
Table for one. You can do that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm used to it. All right, I'll see you next time.
Great to talk with you again, as always, Khaled. See you later.
Okay, take care.